welcome to the Cinema ATL podcast. The Cinema ATL podcast is a weekly podcast that examines the world of entertainment through the lens of local Atlanta filmmakers. That would be us, your hosts. I'm Michael D. Friedman, and that is...
Martin Kelly.
And today we're back from a short Olympic hiatus, and we're here to review the big new movie release, The Suicide Squad. Not to be confused with just Suicide Squad.
That's right.
The Suicide Squad. But first, Martin, why don't you tell our listeners how they can help the podcast out?
Capital THE. But yes, you can help. You can help the podcast by commenting and rating this wherever you listen to the podcast, and subscribe there too. So where can you listen? Well, you know if you're listening now, but you can go to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Amazon Podcasts, Google, and even YouTube.
Yes, and the Cinema ATL podcast also wants to hear from you. You can always tweet us at Cinema ATL with no the, or my personal Twitter account, which is at Clever Transient.
Or hit me up at Marte_real1.
And don't forget our Instagram, even though it's been a little light lately due to our Olympic break. It's at Cinema ATL podcast, all one word.
Well, we can also be heard and seen at cinemaatl.com if you're into old school websites.
I'm into old school. It's like I collect them. I like trade them with my friends. And
exactly.
They go up in value, and it's pretty cool.
Websites are coming back. Websites are coming back, man.
Well, all right. Well, I did want to mention before we started that, yes, sorry for being on a little bit of a break. My real life job got in the way. I was working on the Olympics coverage and pretty much 24/7 gig for a couple weeks. And then also I managed to, on one of my small tiny breaks, I was playing hockey and managed to sprain my ankle pretty badly. So I've had quite an adventure in these past 2 weeks. So,
well, sorry to hear about that ankle, but great job on all the Olympic coverage you were able to provide. So if you missed any of it, Mike's got the solution for you.
So I'm still recovering from my ankle, but I'm gutting it out for you, the listener. So let's get into this review.
The courage, a lot like an Olympian.
Yes, I'm pulling my inner Carrie Strug out and struggling through to bring
nice
you
pull.
the gold.
Nice pull.
So the Suicide Squad. A brief synopsis before we start. If you don't know what this is, I'm sure you do know what this is. But anyway, it's about a band of super villains who work for the government on prison release opportunities. So we have supervillains Harley Quinn, Bloodsport, Peacemaker, and a collection of other nutty cons at Belle Rive prison, and they join the super shady, super secret Task Force X, and they're dropped off at the remote enemy-infused island of Corto Maltese, and chaos ensues.
Chaos ensues, and yeah, if you don't know, this was written and directed by James Gunn of not only Scooby-Doo, but Guardians of the Galaxy 1 and 2 fame.
He did Scooby-Doo? Wait. James Gunn did Scooby-Doo? Jeez.
Yes, he did Scooby-Doo.
I did not know that.
Quite a while back, though, and not even the recent Scooby-Doos. Not the recent Scooby-Doos.
Not the recent ones, but yeah.
But also, obviously, based on... I don't know about obviously. Some people may not know that these are based on DC comic book characters.
Yeah.
And it stars some of them. We talked about the names of them, but Idris Elba plays Bloodsport. Margot Robbie, she's the famous Harley Quinn. We've seen her in a couple of movies so far. Joel Kinnaman is Colonel Rick Flag. Viola Davis plays Waller. John Cena makes a splash as the Peacemaker, and Sylvester Stallone plays a part. Who you may not recognize him. And here's an actor who's been in a bunch of movies. He's always been really good, actually, and but kind of under the radar. Is and I'm gonna butcher his name, but David Desmalchian plays
That's
Polka Dot
close. That's good. That's good.
Polka Dot Man. But I'm an admirer of him. He's been very good in almost everything I've seen him in. So he's really does a great job in this film. But
Right.
we'll get to that a little bit later. And Daniela Melchior plays Ratcatcher 2, and she looked familiar. But then when I checked her credits, I don't think I've ever
Yeah,
seen her
that's funny
before.
because I was like, I've seen her in something, and then I looked at her IMDb, and she's not been in any English language stuff.
No, but
Uh,
she seemed so familiar. But
yeah,
she also did a wonderful job
yes,
actually.
she did. She was really good.
So, round it out, let's talk a little bit quickly about cinematographer Henry Braham, which he worked with James Gunn on Guardians of the Galaxy
Hmm.
Volume 2 before, and he also did another big movie that didn't do great, but it was still a epic scope, The Golden Compass.
Hmm.
And then the two editors that share the credit, Fred Raskin, who also worked with James Gunn on Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, but he also worked with Quentin Tarantino on Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And then Christian Wagner, who's done several of the recent Fast and Furious movies, including Fate of the Furious, but he also is a little bit old school because he is the editor for Bad Boys.
Hmm.
So
So there you go. There's the people responsible. So, what do you want to do? We talk about what was your thoughts on this film, Martin? Oh.
Well, I tell you, at first, I wasn't sure about this film. At first, I wasn't. I ended up enjoying the movie overall. I enjoyed it. I do think there's a lot of flaws with it. I think there's still, maybe it's just the nature of this crew, or trying to bring this crew to light because the other Suicide Squad um, didn't work for me at all.
No, no,
Whereas this one, it works for me. It's entertaining, but at the same time, there's still some things I have issue with it. So,
right.
um, but overall enjoyable because I think James Gunn just brings just enough whimsy to it, and then wonderful cast. Like we mentioned, we talk about there's a bunch of big names associated with it, but some of the other people that really you know kept my attention and really made me like this were the people like Polka Dot Man and Daniela Melchior's Ratcatcher 2. You know what I mean? Those
Hmm.
those were the ones that really made the film for me, in my opinion.
Yeah, I was going to say that if you didn't like the first movie, then don't worry about that because this one is
Exactly.
uh, at least 100 times better than the first one. But in my opinion, I feel kind of like you. I feel it has some flaws in it that could have been better. And I think I might have been overhyped for this movie because I am a big fan of the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, and I love what James Gunn has done with that.
Hmm.
Um, and also because a lot of the reviews that were coming out were saying, this is the best movie of the year so far. And a lot of praise was heaped on this movie. And to me, it just does not live up to that. Now, that all being said, I did enjoy the movie, and I think it's a rewatchable movie. And I think maybe my appreciation will grow a little bit over time, but overall, it is not, to me, it's not the crowning achievement of DC films, which isn't that actually hard because there's not a lot of really great DC films. But it's near the top though. I'll say that. But based off of my expectations from Guardians of the Galaxy and things like that, it did not reach those levels.
I agree, and I am a little bit surprised at the sort of critical acclaim of it. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I think I was also a little bit overhyped because the trailer was enjoyable and it looked like it was going to be a real knockdown, drag out, fun fest,
Right.
kind of thing. And it's fun. It is fun and enjoyable. And you're right; it's probably one of the better DC movies, in quite a while. But yeah, it's still something lacking to it to be like a classic. It's not. It's just not quite on par with the other the other universe out there.
Right.
Still,
And we won't try to go into any spoilers. We might discuss a little spoilers towards the end of our review, but we'll warn you ahead of time. But so I won't go into details of some of the stuff, but I would say that it feels to me like a big budget trauma movie, which makes
It
perfect sense
does.
because James Gunn got his
Yes.
start in trauma, and it was like
Tromeo
this
and
is like
Juliet, right?
yeah, this
Yeah.
is like this would be a trauma film if they had a budget, and in fact, Lloyd Kaufman actually has a cameo in this film. So it's what it felt like to me, and it felt and so some of the stuff that didn't work for me were some of the trauma esque things. Some of the gore was a little too much for my tastes. I get how it was played for
Yeah.
humor, especially in the scenes with Bloodsport and Peacemaker. So that was played for humor, and it
Hmm.
was it was kind of funny. But then it got to a point where you're like, oh man, this is getting kind of kind of over the top.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And then there's the opening sequence. There's a lot of, I mean, like right out of the
Hmm.
gate, there's just a
Hmm.
ton of blood and guts, and
Ooh.
that one is
Yeah.
not played as much for humor.
No.
And if it is being played for humor, it doesn't work as well. Um,
Right. Let's hope it's not played for humor. I think
right,
it's meant to show. I think it's meant to raise the stakes. You know what I mean? And it
right,
certainly does that in terms of the danger that looks to be afoot for the cast that comes together. But yeah, I agree that. And your point about being a big budget trauma film, I think I didn't even think about it that way, but you're absolutely right. It certainly is playing like
yeah,
that
it's
in
got
some
that
ways.
feel to it, really. I mean,
Yeah, yeah,
it's so like
definitely.
zany and
Hmm.
trying to subvert expectations, but I think that's where it falls a little bit. Is it's trying too hard to subvert expectations, so much so that as you start watching it, you're expecting your you're expecting
Yes,
your expectations to be subverted.
right.
So that doesn't really it, it doesn't surprise you as much as it could have, because there was a lot of things that I feel like they were like trying to pull that misdirection, but it just didn't work for me. I saw like some of these gags coming a mile away.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. I agree. I definitely agree. Like I said, I again, it's fun, but here's my take on it. And they got what they wanted to get, and I think and I don't want to speculate on why it happened like this because I hate to be trying to get into people's heads, but for a minute it looked like James Gunn was done with the Guardians,
right,
right? And then so immediately when that happened, which was kind of obviously a tumultuous time for him, he got signed to do the Suicide Squad. And I think the
mhm,
DC people were like, let's get our own Guardians and we'll hire the Guardians guy and throw it together. Right.
right,
And it feels like it's trying to be that, it's trying to be Guardians, and yet we're using the DC characters. And then I think he got licensed to do whatever he wanted, and he sort of let it go even more into an over the top version.
right.
Um, like you said, almost a trauma style film. And I think it just doesn't quite work because we need a little more gravity. I think for the characters.
Right, and some of that does come in towards the end of the film, but by then it's a little too late, in my opinion. Um, there are some. What I will say about what James Gunn does is he does make us care about characters that you would normally not really
Right.
care about. So like in
Hmm.
Guardians, it's a raccoon and a talking tree,
Yes.
and this it's a walking shark and a man who shoots polka dots. Like
Right.
it, he did a good job of making these characters. You care for the characters, and I will say that, but I think it also comes a little too late in the film, and I think it's a Suicide Squad film, so some people are going to die in this
Right.
film, but I think
Right.
there's a little too much of that at the beginning and not enough um, building. But these are like a little bit more of a minor complaints to me, because
Hmm. Hmm.
compared to like the original where there was no character development, or it was like the first one had like, we were introduced all these characters with a bunch of text on the screen, and then
Right.
they didn't really do anything for like half the movie, and we didn't really
Right.
know any of their motivations. And this one, we do get a clear sense of that. So I do applaud James Gunn for giving us, uh, you know, giving us even little moments for characters that who aren't really long lasting in the film. We still get a kind
Hmm.
of a feeling
Hmm.
for them more than we ever did with some of the main characters in the first Suicide Squad movie. So I'll give James
Right.
Gunn
Right.
credit for that. I really think he did a good job of that. So
Sure.
James Gunn really knows how to tell a good story and develop characters within his scripts. I'll give him that.
Yes. No. No. Yeah. Definitely. You're right about all of that because, and again, the good things are really good, and it's just whatever is missing is hard to put my finger on, but yeah, it's missing, and it's
I
just
think you kind of nailed it though with the Guardians. I think they wanted this to be Guardians for DC, and it just doesn't have that same heart as Guardians do. And maybe it comes from the characters like being
yeah.
prisoners, where
Hmm.
where they're kind of more lovable scamps, and and Guardians,
Right. Right.
and so it's a harder road to hoe when you're dealing with people who are kind of crazy and psychotic, or don't care about don't have that humanity in them, or the humanity is buried down deep.
Right.
um, so
Right.
it's a little bit harder to earn that, and that's why I feel like towards the end of the movie I feel that a little bit more. And maybe if there's a Suicide Squad 3 and they can actually bring back some of the cast, maybe
Right.
there's an
Right.
opportunity there. But yeah.
I agree. I agree. And that's part of maybe the drawback is the fact that, this, technically, part of what I call it is a soft reboot, right? But you you expect a little bit of continuation. You get that with like a couple of the characters. There's actually more than a couple characters from the first one that are still in this. Some of them we lose pretty quickly though.
Right, right.
But one of the main ones, of course, is Harley Quinn, and I want to say about the Harley Quinn segments. I think that is some of the coolest, the action pieces, because we kind of get a sense of what is inside Harley Quinn's mind, which is completely different about what was actually happening. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so that was really cool. I liked how that was handled, and I think it's maybe some of the best stuff that's been done with the Harley Quinn character so far in terms of action scenes and
Right.
things of that nature. So got kudos to that. And then again, like you said, he does succeed in making you care about unconventional characters because I didn't know, how we were going to react to a shark, a walking shark, and yet he was he was great.
he was
He
that he was my favorite character, honestly. The walking shark.
so
So
yeah, so it was really cool that he's able to make you feel for a character like that, and
character that's what I was saying about like this character is he was like so just dumb, but
mhm.
you still feel for the character. They made you feel like this character, this walking shark who is dumb as a brick, still has a character arc, which
Yes,
none of
yes,
the characters in Suicide Squad, the original one, had a character arc. So
right.
that's why I have to give James Gunn credit for that. I loved King Shark. I loved him. Is a nom
Definitely.
nom? No King Shark. No
No,
nom
yeah,
nom.
not right now. No, not that one.
And then yeah, making you feel for somebody like Polka Dot Man, who's just like a joke character, pretty much. That they could have just like it could have been a joke, but they actually show you some layers to this person, and how he became that way, um, even Idris Elba's character. He starts out as kind of a despicable guy at the beginning,
Hmm.
especially when
Hmm.
he's talking to his daughter at the beginning. You're like, oh, I'm supposed to root for this guy, but then you kind of understand like where his character's coming from. Like even though he feels like he has no redemptive qualities, that that's why he treats his daughter that way, and he doesn't. He wants her to succeed, even though he doesn't feel like he can be in her life. And then then like through the course of this, he does have an arc as well.
Right,
Um,
right.
and more
No,
about
yeah,
inner strength, and him and Ratcatcher's like stories kind of merge with each other, and kind of like have this impact on each other, and the characters really help each other grow.
right, right. No, totally. And they earn that, like they earn that ending that has to do with, his sort of issue,
Right,
and it's really cool and it's sweet. So again, a lot of great things about the film. It's just like I said, just something just quite, just not quite completely there for it.
right, and it's funny because I can't put my finger on exactly what. I guess I did kind of a little bit. It was like kind of like the fact that I kind of knew the fake out moments were fake out moments,
Right,
and I
right,
think
right,
that's what kind of bummed me out about it. Like, and then there was, like we talking about, Suicide Squad. There's a lot of characters in this that I kind of wanted to learn a little bit more about, but didn't get that chance. So
right.
that also kind of bummed me out. So
Yeah, and I think part of it, it sneaks up on you, but like part of the movie is like feels like a team episode.
right,
Unfortunately, in
right,
some ways, it's like part of it involves finding a guy at a bar. You know what I
right,
mean? It's like, come on, man. Is this a feature film? I mean, like, what are you talking about? That part of the mission is finding a guy at a bar. You know
right.
what I mean? Like, okay,
Oh,
but
I do want to say though, I think the true star of the film, which we didn't mention, is Milton.
oh
I'm not
heck
going to
yeah.
say more
I,
about that, but
see,
he is the true star of the film.
well, I was gonna bring up Milton at one point because that's my favorite moment in the film is involves Polka Dot Man and Milton. But
Yes.
yeah, you're right. You're right.
And I
Milton
feel
is
like that moment actually gives Polka Dot Man even more layers. That's what
yes,
I liked about that, and it could have been played more of a joke, but
yeah, yeah. No, totally. He was that was true coolness right
yeah,
there. Is that moment? But I was gonna say that later. But yes, you got to it
I
for
stole it.
sure.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. So, yeah, I mean, yeah, what else? What else can we say? What else can we say? Let's talk a little bit about. I mean, we've talked a lot about the cast. The cast was great. You know what I mean? And like I said, I think the supporting players were standouts. Whereas you expect great things from Idris Elba
Yeah,
and Margot Robbie or Robbie. I always butcher that
I always say
pronunciation
Robbie,
too.
but I have no idea how to pronounce her last name.
Right, but
DC female actresses, actresses in DC films, I never know how to pronounce their last names, like Gal Gadot or Gal Gadot, Margot Robbie, Margot Robbie,
right, yeah. Man, that's a tough one.
Viola
I think
Davis,
it's
Viola Davis.
well that one. I think I think that's a you issue. That was not that hard, but the other two, I get it. You
Oh,
could
it's
you could
actually
go either way.
Voila Davis.
Voila, Davis. It's French, yes.
But yeah,
But terrific cast. I mean, terrific cast. I think here's one drawback, and I'll say this, and no, nothing against him, and he's going to be around for a while. Is that John Cena? You know, has been funny in a lot of stuff, and he's
right.
really funny in this, but there's points when he needs more gravity that he doesn't produce.
I totally agree with you, and we'll see because they're making a Peacemaker TV show. We'll see how it goes. But we talked about character development and how these minor characters got character arcs and everything like that. John Cena's character really is just the walking punchline in this
Hmm.
film. He does not
Hmm.
have those moments where it's like they could have made his character have a little bit more. I mean, there's a scene towards the end where he's, there's
Hmm.
some gravitas to this what's going on, and there is no moment of decision for Peacemaker at this point. It's just he
Right.
is this character, and how, and that's how he's going to react in these situations. The Peacemaker at all costs type guy.
Right. Right.
And so, hopefully in the TV show they explore a little bit more of him outside of that, because that's all we get in this film.
Yeah, and I think that's probably the if I come back to think about it, we're talking about how we can't put our finger on it, but that's probably it because that's an important piece, and yet he's enjoyable in a
Right.
lot of this movie. A lot of stuff he does in this film is extremely enjoyable, but then when it gets to the moment where it's got to be more gravitas to it, to the situation and to the character, it doesn't deliver, and
Right.
that's the biggest flaw, I think.
Yeah, no, I agree. And yeah, I mean, like you said, I totally agree that he's funny as all get out
Yeah,
during, like, one of my favorite scenes is that scene between him and Bloodsport when they're trying to one
yes,
up each other.
yeah.
Um, so so yeah, I mean, he does what he was told to do in the script very well, but I don't know if this might be one place where the script falters, or is it because John Cena can't carry that gravitas a little bit better? Maybe it should have played better than on the page. I don't know. I
Yeah,
don't know.
I mean it's a nuance that doesn't deliver. It's something that has to happen, and it's happened elsewhere. You know what I mean? It's happened in other movies. You know what I mean? You've seen other
Right,
people do it, other actors, but I'm not going to lay the blame at John Cena, but I'm just saying it did. This character did not deliver what it needed to deliver in those moments. So
right. I mean, based off of everything that I was seeing in the trailers and even like the early parts of the movie, knowing that he's also got an HBO Max show coming out, he should have been the star of the film. I mean, there's some stuff that in this movie that he does is extremely hilarious, especially when they're getting their debrief before they go on
yeah,
their
oh
mission.
yeah, yeah.
And he is not the breakout character in this film. I mean, I think
Mm-mm.
King Shark overshadows him, Polka Dot Man overshadows him,
Yeah,
Harley Quinn overshadows him. I mean,
yeah,
he's not. People aren't coming out of this film saying, "Oh man, Peacemaker was the best part of that film," even though he was great in certain parts. So
right.
yeah, there was some sort of thing there.
Yeah, yeah. So I think that's probably the key to it. And like I said, I enjoy him. He's been great in other things. I think more so he's been funny so much that maybe he it's hard to see him become more
Right,
serious or taken more seriously. I mean, he does a similar part in the where he's all serious in the new Fast and Furious, but even with that, I mean, that's such an ensemble that he's such a small part of that one. You know what I mean? It
right,
just it just like I said, I don't know if it's him, and I'm not going to say it's him, but it's just that's what sort of lets you down in the film.
right. No, I agree. I agree. Well, I mean, I think we're. I
Yeah,
don't know
we've
what,
talked a
what
lot.
I don't know
We've
as
talked
much
a
we can
lot.
talk, more we can talk. I mean, not without going into spoiler territory.
Exactly.
We're going to leave the
Exactly.
spoilers out of this one because we danced around some of them, and I think if you've seen the movie, you know what we're talking about
Yeah,
enough
definitely,
that
definitely.
that. But so I guess we'll talk about what's your overall grade for this one.
I'm going to give this a C plus.
Interesting. So I'm actually going to go up from you. I'm actually going to
Okay.
give this a B.
Oh, nice.
I
Okay.
did enjoy it enough that I would recommend it. It's just not as A plus as a lot of other people were saying,
Right.
but it's
Right.
solid. Yeah,
No, and again, it's enjoyable. I'm not going to
right,
say that it's an enjoyable watch. I don't think I'd watch it a second time. Except for if it's on again, like on cable. I might watch it certain parts in the middle that are
right.
so enjoyable. But it's not like I'm going to sit and watch the whole thing again. So that's why it's just a C plus. It's not going to disappoint you if you go to the movies, which that's another thing. People apparently didn't go to the movies
No,
to watch this one
well, I think,
because it was available, obviously, on
yeah. I mean, I
HBO
think
Max.
it's interesting, this whole thing. We've talked about it before, but like,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I know I watched it because I have a sprained ankle. I wanted to go see it. The thing was, I watched it at home. But I mean, the more you give people an excuse not to go to the movies, the more they're going to not go to the movies.
Right. Right.
So I think if they really want to like still go by box office numbers, and I think they need to look at their strategy a little bit on how they're releasing these films. Even if it's just like, hey, we'll put it in the theaters for a month and then go to HBO Max and then have our other windows. Um,
Yeah, I think they need to rethink it, and I feel bad for the theaters, obviously,
Right.
because I'm really rooting for them to come back. But yeah, I mean, I don't think it's going to work, at least with the way HBO is doing it, because so many
Yeah.
people have access to HBO Max.
I mean, it might, like, I think Disney is doing it a little bit better in that way. I mean, not personally. I mean, I love the fact that HBO Max is showing me these first run movies.
Yes,
But Disney Plus, where you have to pay that premium access fee to like $30 to watch the film, that
you
really
might as
gives you
well
the
go to the
decision.
movie.
You're like,
Yeah,
yeah. I
exactly.
mean, if you're going now for a kids movie, that's probably a bargain because you don't have to take your kids to see the
Exactly.
theater. But for an adult movie, superhero movie like this, yeah, you're going to pay that much if you go to the theater.
Right,
Anyway,
right.
so maybe you want to go to the theater. It all depends on what your personal experience is at that point. But I think a lot of it also has to do with the fact that the Delta variants in the news, and I think people are starting to kind of get a
True.
little
No,
scared to
exactly.
even
I
do
think
that type
that
things
that plays a
anymore.
big part in it too. I think just because
Mhm.
that has been a big issue of late. So yeah, people don't know for sure if it's okay to get back out,
Yeah, hopefully we
even
can
though
get past this because we were starting to have a little bit of freedom, and it
yeah,
felt good. And
it
I hope we
definitely
don't
did.
go. I hope we don't go back to where we were. So whatever you can do to help.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
not going to prescribe anything for
No,
anybody,
no,
but
no. It's just
whatever you
be
can do to help.
just be smart. Do your
All right,
thing. You just be smart and do
let's
your
try to
thing.
cut this off.
Yeah, yeah. But and this is not even and we could really go into detail if we wanted to talk about the controversial aspects of this whole theater and these windows
Right.
because that's a whole nother thing. So let's not do that.
Well, speaking of cutting things off, let's go ahead and stop this episode. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for coming back after our little break. We're hoping not to have too many more of these in the future, but you never know. We're human after all. What do you want from us?
That's right.
Anyway, that wraps it up for this week. Once again, ask you to share and comment and rate wherever you listen to this, or share on Facebook, Twitter, etc. And we want to thank Eureka Failure again for providing the music as they do each and every week. They were working on a new album. They were in the studio a couple weeks ago, so hopefully we'll get to
Nice.
hear some more new music pretty soon. Check them out at eurekafailure.bandcamp.com or on Spotify or wherever you want to go. And then finally, Martin, what are your final words of wisdom for this week?
Mine are pretty simple. Mine this week is just to surround yourself with positive people. And that doesn't mean necessarily physically, but virtually and in spirit. Surround yourself with positive people.
Oh, when you said that doesn't mean physically, I thought there was like, are we like positively a negative attraction thing, magnetic things, like
No,
magnets,
no,
like
nothing to
positive.
do,
You said
no, nothing to
physically
do with that.
positive. Nothing about that.
Nothing to do with polarity.
Nothing to do with polarity. Okay, but just positivity.
Just
And
positivity.
yes, okay.
Exactly.
So yeah, so we don't have to talk about magnets and if they're real or not. Or
No, we don't have to. We could deal with that on a different episode.
well, all right. Until next time, we hope you enjoy this episode, and we'll see you again. That was an awkward ending, but anyway.